Okay, so welcome to the second PowerPoint series in this thing. And the last time, what I tried to do was pitch the argument to you guys that miscommunication happens all the time. However, that miscommunication is often magnified in the online context because of the text language that people use, which is often missing tone, it's missing sarcasm, it's missing the meaning of these words, and that can cause some problems. So let's talk about some research. This has kind of shown that this is actually a thing. This isn't something that people just made up. And you may say, like, remember the misconceptions, right? This is intuitive. Who cares? Well, it does. It does matter, and this miscommunication is something that needs to be looked at. So here's what researchers have done. All right, so what we're going to talk about first is the receiver of the message. So the people who receive the messages that you send to them online. And so that's who we're focusing on. So you send a message, how is that other person going to read it? Now, you may think that they are just going to read it and know what they mean, know what your message means, but that's not always the case. So what's going to happen is there's going to be these barriers, all right? There's going to be these issues that come up when the receiver is trying to interpret what's going on. So there was a research study in 2008 which looked at this, and what they had, and they looked at youth, and what they wanted to do was looked at if you send a set of online messages to someone using these text the text language that I talked about last time, how is it interpreted? And here is some of the stimuli that they used. And so what participants had to do was read this, and then they had to write out what it was that this message was saying. So you can see it right there. If you want to pause it, I urge you to pause this video real quick, just so you can try to figure out what it is they're trying to say. Some sentences in this thing are easier than others to decode. Like, for example, the very bottom one, do you want to come along? That makes sense. They're talking about the sentence before that says, I'm going out with my brother and his best friend tomorrow for AO. I don't know what AO actually means. Do you want to come along? So I get that. The first line is LO. I don't know what that means. Then it says, how are you? I haven't seen you for ages. Then later on and whatnot. So you can see quickly how these things that you send, so you send them having a particular meaning in mind, but the receiver sees this and is like, what is happening? So when they see this, what they found is, so they had participants read that, these youth participants read that, and then what they had to do was they had to write what it meant in real language, right? Not in text language. So decipher it, decode it. And what they found is that the more spelling errors that there were in the text translation correlated with how many kind of text language was used in how much text language is used in the message it was sent. And furthermore, the ability score of spelling was also lower for the receiver. So in other words, what this tells me is that overall participants read these messages and they didn't get it, right? They didn't get the full meaning. If they did, there wouldn't be any errors and spelling ability wouldn't matter at all. But what ended up happening was these correlations that you see in front of you did exist, where there were issues with interpretation of these messages. Now, in another study, remember, we're still looking at the receiver. What they did was they were looking at attributions of a person. So basically what happens is an attribution is a judgment you make about somebody based on the information that you're given. So, for example, if I were to send an email that said, come to my office now, and that's all I sent, no punctuation, just come to my office now, some students would say that I was mean, where other students would say that was really nice, or other students would say, or be really nervous. And in all reality, I just said, like, come to my office. But remember, that tone is missing. And because that tone, that meaning, that sarcasm is gone, what's going to happen is you will interpret my email to be reflective of me. So here's what they did. This is a really neat study. What McAndrew and DeJong did is they had people read this hypothetical email. They had them read several, but this is just the one they included in their paper. And you can see here that there's a lot of question marks. All right, so there's a question mark here, 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 here. So there's 5 question marks. There's several periods as well, and that's fine. But there's only one exclamation point. And so what they did was they gave people this stimuli. But what they did with this stimuli is they manipulated how many question marks there were and how many exclamation points there were versus how many were both. So some participants read it as you see it here. Other participants, they read the same thing, but instead of the question mark, it was an exclamation point. All right, like that. Now, what's happening here in this particular study is afterwards what they did is they asked the participants how angry, how friendly, and how happy was the sender of the message. All right, so this is the receiver of that message making attributions. So let's be clear. Let's get rid of that. The independent variables were the email had 5 exclamation points, 5 question marks. It had both or it had neither. All right, and once again, let me get those results out. Here's what they showed. So let's just focus on the happy one real quick. Let's focus on that happy. What they found is that if you have exclamation points, remember, because that's those, that you were rated, that the receiver of that message thought you were sending a happy note, right? And if you sent question marks, that's this one here, right? That's that one there. The sender was perceived as being unhappy with you. We can switch that around with the angry. What you see is that a lot of people thought that if you sent an email with a lot of question marks, you were going to be that the sender was angry. And all they're doing is sending a message. And what people are doing is when they receive these messages, they're trying to make attributions about the sender, about the person who sent the message. The receiver is making attributions. They don't have the tone. They don't have the sarcasm. They don't have the inflection of voice that you have in face-to-face communication. So they're using any information at all possible to help with that. And what they find here is that the punctuation is some of the information they use, and they make these attributions that may or may not be correct. So let's summarize these 2 studies together, right? The first study that I talked about that was done in 2008, that was all about text language and how shortened messages are related to kind of a misinterpretation of what was actually sent, as seen by those spelling errors and whatnot. Look at this email stimuli real quick. There's no text lingo in there whatsoever. But what you're doing is you're making attributions about somebody based on just the punctuation, right? And so what's happening here, if we were to sum these 2 things up together, is that online miscommunication is likely because of these issues. Even if your spelling is perfect, like in this email right here, this email stimuli right here, even if everything is perfect grammatically, there's no text lingo, you still have this miscommunication issue because of attributions, okay? Because of the attributions. So let's talk about the sender. So the receiver, we just talked about how they're trying to decode what's happening and they can't do it well. The sender, on the other hand, they may think it's the best thing ever to type these quick conversations between people. And I don't want to paint the picture that this is a bad thing. Remember, I think that online communication as a whole is a really good thing. And using this text language is really helpful when you're trying to do things like multitask. Research has actually shown that if you're trying to multitask, using text language is the easiest way to communicate with someone if you need them. However, even though it can't be readily deciphered by others, it's not that easy to decipher your text language. Texting is used in all sorts of things. There's actually research studies that have been used where they used text messaging for things like behavioral interventions, for daily reminders, for things like there was one research study that used it for like a dieting type of thing, where it was inspirational reminders about how you don't need to eat these foods right now. And so texting and text language can be a very helpful thing if used correctly. Okay, so let's conclude. Overall, so far I've painted the picture that miscommunication is not a great thing and that in the online world is magnified, right? And from there, what's important to note is that the information that's being sent has, from the receiver's or from the sender's point of view, all these advantages. Like you can multitask, it saves a lot of time, it's great. But the the receiver, on the other hand, there are some problems on that end, because often these things are not easily interpreted, and that makes this thing problematic. Okay, this makes online communication problematic. So what I want you to do now is, once again, pause this to write down that SurveyMonkey code, or copy and paste it directly in your web browser, because the next step is going to be to you guys to complete a short questionnaire about what you guys heard today. And then we will have just one more of these presentations left to give, and then we're all done.